Hello everyone, Allie here, and welcome to the Gold Mine. Thank you so much for joining me here on another episode at Allie's Treasure Trove. Today we do have episode number 24 of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles playthrough here with Allie Plays August Takeover. Yes, I know we are getting close to the end of August, but still, lots of more content to come here from the Chronicles. We are about to get into Trial Part 1 here of in-game episode number 2 of the Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve, the Memoirs of the Clouded Kokoro. So, we are once again defending Natsume-san against the charge of attempted murder of that jester guy, Mr. Shamspear, who has awoken from being poisoned and actually pointed the blame at Natsume. So, not sure how this is going to play out. Not sure. I was wondering at the end of last episode, maybe it's some sort of scam. Don't know what kind of insurance scam you could run in the 1900s or late 1800s, but not sure what's up, because of course keep putting emphasis on how destitute that want-to-be actor is. So, not sure what leads we would have here at the moment. That one little small yellow guy that looks like Popeye is a pretty suspicious character, I would say. We've seen him only a couple times. One time in actually game 1 here of the Chronicles, arguing with the victim here in this case. And then yesterday, peeking in the window. So, being very, very suspicious. Not sure how he's going to play into all of this, but I definitely think he has something to do with it. What that may be? No inkling at this point in time. Maybe he is the attempted murderer. No clue, but I'm ready to see how the first part of this trial plays out. So it is currently 9:23 a.m. Old Bailey, defendant's antechamber. So let's see what we have in store for us here. The Old Bailey. This place always makes me feel strange. I seem to get chills down my spine and break out in a nervous sweat all at the same time. Well, I didn't think I'd be back here so soon. That's my line! Good morning! Ah, good morning, Mr. Natsume. It was only 2 days ago that I was declared not guilty here. Yes, we somehow managed to prove he didn't stab Miss Green in the back. But now this! Another morning, another murder, and here I am again in this hellhole! Can't keep coming to court! And I'm beginning to think he's right. It really does seem as though he's cursed. Mr. Naruhodo, I'm afraid I have bad news! Mr. Natsume, good morning! Yes, morning. So, here we are again? Yes, again. Judicial Assistant Miss Mikotaba Esquires, what's the bad news? Oh dear, you heard, did you? If you come in shouting at the top of your voice, people can't help hearing what you say! Oh, I'm sorry. You've done nothing wrong, Miss Susato. Now, what is it? Well, it seems that the prosecution in today's trial will be led by Lord Baroque Van Zeeks. Van Zeeks? Ah! Oh no! Oh no, no! The so-called Reaper of the Bailey, the most legendary prosecutor in the land. In the trial 2 days ago, he pursued Soseki-san and I relentlessly. Of course, by the skin of our teeth. We managed to pull through, but still. Perhaps Mr. Natsume's acquittal in the last trial wasn't the end of the matter, after all. Yes, I know what you're thinking. The legend of the Reaper that says, nothing can save a person in the dock when Lord Van Zeeks is the prosecutor. Oh no! And even if the person is found not guilty, the accused will meet a mysterious end one way or another. We've experienced it firsthand. The man we successfully defended met the most terrifying end after his acquittal, right here in the Old Bailey. Do I have to put up with those ice-cold eyes boring into my soul again? Cursed by evil spirits, and now by the Reaper! Pair of petrifying perils, potentially! Well, if it's potentially... At least you appear to have hope, Mr. Natsume.
Welcome, student Mr. Naruhodo Esquire.
Ah, yes?
I'm innocent. You have to believe me. You, more than anyone now.
Don't worry. I'll be your steadfast ally every step of the way in this battle. I promise. And this promises to be a hard battle, I fear. Well, trial is scheduled to begin shortly. We should move into the courtroom. Let's go. Oh yes, I forgot to say, I'm afraid he won't be able to make it. Mr. Sholmes, I mean. That's probably for the best. Oh! If he were here, I might be tempted to rely on his help. And that could be seen as a weakness. If Lord Van Zieks were to notice, he'd prey on it mercilessly. At least, that's my gut feeling. Mr. Naruhodo!
You're right. Yes, you're so right. No, well said, locum student Mr. Naruhodo Esquire. Well said.
And I swear on this sword at my side, and on the spirit of Kazuma that it harbors. Now I'll show him what a Japanese lawyer can do. I'll set you free. With honor. Oh yes! Alright, so it's 9:40 a.m. Going to the courtroom a little early, I guess. We've seen the majority of those jurors before.
In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session. And I now call upon the counsels for the prosecution and defense to declare their willingness to proceed.
Vampire. The prosecution is ready. The defense is ready, my lord. Readiness for the trial, my learned Nipponese friend, is not what the defense needs. What you need is readiness for your inevitable defeat. And it's not just in my imagination. It's really there. Lord Van Zieks has such an animosity towards us Japanese for some reason. It was some time ago now that he first became known as the Reaper of the Bailey, I believe. These past few years, he hasn't appeared in court at all. Yet now he's back in the courtroom, though for some reason, only when I'm defending. This Reaper, with his curious disdain for us Japanese, is a prosecutor shrouded in mystery. Still, this isn't the time to be pondering that. I have to concentrate on Soseki-san's trial.
Furthermore, I now call upon the 6 ladies and gentlemen of the jury. You have been chosen at random to represent the will of the people in this trial. Are you ready to fulfill your duty?
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. I had a feeling this larrikin wasn't innocent before. Mr. Bruce Fairplay, the lady with no neck. I must say that I feel especially ruthless on days when my hat refuses to sit right. Archie, hello. Oh, well, I rather like how you're wearing your hat. I think the ruthless look is very fetching, actually. Alright, we have a new person. I need to be somewhere at 10 o'clock. I have a very important meeting. Let's make this quick. This guy again. I couldn't agree more. Need to take home Fat Bob tonight, or the missus will go through the roof. She might throw another knife at me.
No! May the Lord show us the light here and lead his flock to a righteous verdict.
So we only have one new juror here. And of course, as usual, I'll be winging these juror voices. I can't keep track of what I give to which jurors. That's just a little bit too much. But hopefully you all will still be able to enjoy it. The British jury system is so very different to our own, isn't it? It's quite extraordinary to think that the power of judgment is in the hands of 6 members of the public, and that the judge can only pass sentence when all jurors are in agreement about the defendant's guilt. 6 citizens of London chosen at random, or at least, that's the idea. The prosecution would draw attention to the fact the accused was on trial here but 2 days ago. Accordingly, where possible, the same jurors have been asked to return for duty today. Okay, that explains it.
Very well. Let us commence the trial. Lord Van Zieks, your opening statement, please.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is not the intent of the prosecution to cast doubt over your past decision. However, the innocent verdict afforded to this eccentric Nipponese before has had dire consequences. Did the accused repent for his wrongdoing in that affair? Far from it. Instead, he used his freedom to perpetrate a most blood-curdling crime. Namely, that of the attempted murder of his neighboring lodger, an innocent Englishman. To explain the circumstances of the crime, prosecution calls its first witnesses to the stand. The detective responsible for investigating the scene, and the accused himself. Witnesses, your names and occupations, please.
Yes, sir! Tobias Gregson, Detective Inspector at Scotland Yard's Homicide Division.
Soseki Natsume from the Empire of Japan. My government ordered me to come here as a student to study your language and culture. Mr. Natsume? Yes, my lord, yes, sir. I'm quite sure I'm not mistaken that you swore an oath never to set foot in my courtroom again. I remember it as if it were yesterday.
The day before, in fact, my lord, but close enough.
Believe me, this is the last place I want to be.
Inspector, let's hear from you first. Explain the case for the court.
Right you are, sir! The incident occurred at the Garrett household where the defendant has lodgings. In the ground floor room of the victim, Mr. William Shamspeare. The defendant has already admitted to visiting the victim on the night in question. Mr. Shamspeare collapsed in his room as a result of poisoning by strychnine. He was found the following morning when the landlord suspected something was wrong and broke down the door.
This means, I presume, that the door to the victim's room was locked at the time of the incident.
Correct, my lord. It was locked from the inside, making entry to or exit from the room impossible.
Although the victim, Mr. Shamspeare, lives to tell the tale, he very nearly didn't. The man was halfway to heaven when we first found him. I was the first officer on the scene, my lord. And I have a photographic print here that I took at the time to show how it looked.
What's this? That's weird.
Yes, a chilling scene indeed. This man looks very much deceased.
That's right! Everyone present believed that's exactly what he was.
Very well. I shall accept this photographic print as evidence for the court. Now then, Mr. Natsume. Yes. As the defendant, do you have anything to say at this juncture? They're haunted. Haunted by evil spirits. Good gracious, what's haunted? My lodgings. There's been a whole series of strange happenings in my lodgings. The tenant before me died in mysterious circumstances. A woman was stabbed by no one on the outside street. My neighbor was poisoned. And me? What about me? I've nearly been killed countless times. Killed, Mr. Natsume? How? Even on that fateful night it happened. When I returned from Mr. Shamspeare's room, I lit my gas stove and climbed into bed. But before long, the stove went out, and somebody tried to kill me. You must always extinguish all fires before retiring for the night, Mr. Natsume. But it's so cold, my runny nose would freeze. The point is, I didn't poison my neighbor. Oh, why am I being accused of this? Why is my existence so cursed? Thank you, witnesses. I believe I have a reasonably clear picture of events.
If I could raise one more point, my lord. One more conclusive point.
conclusive. Go on.
Fortunately, the victim, Mr. Shamspeare, has regained consciousness after his ordeal, and he has named the true culprit. The poison consumed by the victim was administered in a cup of tea that he drank on the night in question. Tea, my lord, that was brought to the victim's room by the accused.
The accused? Good grief. Order! Order!
Yes, that's the crux of this whole case. If Soseki-san is innocent, then why? Why has the victim accused him?
Well, Mr. Natsume, what have you say to this accusation? That evening, yes, I did take some freshly brewed tea with me when I visited Mr. Shamspeare's room as a gift. The public water pump outside always freezes at night, so I brought bottled water especially to make it. And this is the result. Never will I touch tea again. Never.
The public pump was frozen, you say?
That's not information we've heard before.
That will do. Thank you. Now, according to our laws, the defense must have the opportunity to cross-examine witnesses at least once. Therefore, call upon these witnesses for our formal testimony. I presume the prosecution has no objection.
None whatsoever, my lord.
Good. Then you will give your account of events on the night in question to the court now. Yes. Yes, my lord.
That catastrophic night.
It was around 9 o'clock that evening when I visited my neighbor and took some tea with me as a gift. We had a heated literary debate over a nice hot drink, after which I went back to my room at around 11. My tea was completely harmless. He couldn't have locked the door behind me otherwise, could he?
Strychnine takes some time to have an effect on the body. People don't keel over immediately after taking it. The victim would have been perfectly able to lock the door after his guest left. The argument still stands.
Yes, I see. It all seems relatively straightforward.
Excuse me, but that testimony does raise one rather crucial point, I think. Mr. Natsume claims his tea to have been harmless. Presumably, though, the teacups have been examined for traces of the poison, haven't they?
Why didn't I think of that?
Well, as it happens, no. We haven't been able to.
Did I hear you correctly, Inspector? Scotland Yard has failed to examine the suspect's substance.
How could you have overlooked something so important? Isn't that the first thing you should have done? My learned Nipponese friend is falsely incensed. The inspector said Scotland Yard was unable to examine the tea, not that it was overlooked. Unable? Why?
It's simple enough. There is none left. Not a drop. Someone must have been very thirsty indeed.
With current scientific techniques, it's not possible to test for poison under such circumstances.
We only need a drop, but that one drop does actually have to exist, funnily enough.
The lack of examination notwithstanding, it appears nothing other than the tea passed the victim's lips on the night in question.
I see. Thank you. The matter is clear.
Cast your eyes over the jury, my learned friend. What? You can see it in their faces, I'm sure. The recognition of the accused guilt. Your client's fate is all but sealed. In mere moments from now, you will lose, and your compatriot will be damned for all eternity. He's right. I can feel all 6 of the jurors looking daggers at me. But I can't let them beat me down. I won't.
Counsel for the defense, proceed with your cross-examination.
Yes, my lord. Were you and your neighbor good friends then?
No! We weren't friends, not at all! Not at all! Never, ever!
A simple no would have sufficed. Then, why did you decide to pay him a visit?
Mr. Shamspear fancies himself as having great literary knowledge. As a fellow scholar of English literature, we find much to talk about together.
Come now, no Nipponese could understand the finer points of English literature. And on the night in question, that was the topic of conversation as well, I presume?
It was the day of my last trial. When I was acquitted, I had just arrived back in my lodgings when I ran into Mr. Shamspear outside on the street. That was at around 6 o'clock. We exchanged one or two pleasantries, but it soon turned into a heated discussion. He was on his way out at the time, though, so I promised to visit his room that evening at 9 to continue our debate. But did I have ill intentions? No! Not one! Not two! Not any! Not at all! Never! Ever!
A simple no would have sufficed, I feel.
Then tell the court what did happen when you visited the victim's room.
Hold it!
A literary debate about Shakespeare's works, I think you said, didn't you?
Shakespeare? Very worthy topic of conversation, I must say. Oh yes, my lord! Romeo and Juliet! Who was stronger? It was a profoundly pleasurable parley. Romeo and Juliet?
Who was stronger? I know I'm going to regret asking this, but how did the debate go?
Well, we both agreed that we would reach a conclusion more quickly with the reenactment. So we battled it out in a Greco-Roman style, naturally.
What?
Mr. Shamspear had all sorts of costumes in his room for such a contest.
So when you say a reenactment, you mean you are actually in costume?
He as Romeo and I as Juliet, after a vigorous wild tussle. I as Juliet came out on top. A victory I'll cherish forever. I dare not imagine the terrible scene of carnage.
The fact remains that it was you who prepared the tea and took it to the victim, correct?
I boiled the water in my room and made a pot to take with me. I'd heard that he was too poor to have tea himself, you see.
It's true, there was no sign of any tea leaves in the man's room.
I wanted to do something nice, to be friendly. So why is everyone looking at me with such suspicion? My tea was harmless, of course it was.
And do you have any basis for that
Statement, witness.
Hold it!
Yes, there is not a drop of tea left in the victim's room anywhere, was there?
That's correct! Anyone would think the fellow had never had a pot of tea before. He must have licked it dry. Which is a pity, because one drop is all we would have needed to analyze it for poison.
And you say that you returned home to your room at 11 o'clock, Mr. Natsume?
Yes, definitely. By heaven and earth, I swear it.
The landlord was able to verify that, as it happens. He confirmed that the defendant went back to his room at 11 that night.
And how is the landlord able to attest to this?
He, said it was the lamps, I believe.
The lamps, Inspector?
When tenants return to their rooms and start using gas, the lamps in other parts of the house flicker.
Yes, Mr. Garrideb seems to pay a lot of attention to the comings and goings of his tenants.
There's only one key to Mr. Shamspear's room. I know that for certain. So he must have locked the door himself from inside his room.
The victim has confirmed that to be the case, yes.
So I'm right. My tea was harmless. Completely harmless. If you take poison, you die. Everyone knows that.
It's not that simple, I'm afraid.
What do you mean?
Hold it!
How long does it take for symptoms to appear then?
And according to the coroner I was speaking to at the yard, about 30 minutes after the poison's consumed. Then the victim suffers violent convulsions, cramping, and stiffness, and eventually dies from asphyxiation.
So there's a 30-minute interval between when the poison is ingested and the onset of symptoms. There seem to be a lot of different types of poison in the world, that's for sure.
Oh dear! Death by poisoning again? It's always so awful.
30 minutes is a long time. Certainly long enough for the victim to have locked the door behind the accused after he left. You can't deny that. And it further degrades Soseki-san's alibi.
And I have the medical report from the doctor who examined the victim here, my lord. It spells it out, really. The accused is the only person who could have done it.
Very well, the court will add this report to the court record as evidence.
Oh yes, I see it here. Delayed onset of symptoms.
Great. I want to look at the, It's around 1:30. Alright, well, that timeline doesn't add up.
Hold it!
Press this and then we'll circle back around. The argument still stands, you say?
This is what Mr. Natsume's been saying, isn't it? The pair of them drank tea together that night, so if there was poison in it, the victim wouldn't have been able to lock the door after the accused left later on.
Exactly. Me and my tea are innocent. Sweet and innocent, I tell you.
I'm afraid, sir, that doesn't follow. You see, strychnine is a slow-acting poison. In other words, it takes time for the symptoms to appear. So you could have left the room up to 30 minutes after the victim drank the tea. And as long as you do that, Mr. Shamspear could have locked the door after you'd gone.
But no. We drank the tea straight away. The battle over whether Romeo or Juliet was stronger, that came after the tea.
Do you have any evidence to support that statement?
In my great homeland, the Empire of Japan, we have a saying, drink tea while it's hot.
Sure, a proverb will satisfy the prosecution.
I'm afraid there's no conclusive proof to support the defendant's assertion. On the contrary, there are sufficient grounds to infer his guilt in this matter. No!
That's the extent of their testimony, is it?
If I could voice a personal opinion, Mr. Naruhodo.
Of course, go ahead.
Mr. Natsume is arguing for his innocence so adamantly and so persistently. Yet Inspector Gregson just brushes what he says aside. It's really quite infuriating.
I agree. So we need to find an inconsistency in what the inspector is saying, I think.
I'm afraid so. As things stand, the jurors are sure to find Mr. Natsume guilty.
As I see it, what we need to focus on is the poison in the tea. Let's listen carefully to this testimony again.
Yes.
Alright. I guess the first one. Ah, no! Darn it. Alright, let's run it back. Going around, circling. Alright, medical report. Yeah.
Objection!
What?
I guess not. All that circle around for nothing. It doesn't make sense. It takes 30 minutes for the poison to set in, but they're saying he poisoned him at 9 o'clock. Well, I guess. I don't know. Alright, well, my inclination there was not 100% correct. Why do we still have the book receipt? Oh. What is it, Mr. Naruto? This bar of soap. When we first found it, I could have sworn there was some sort of round disc in this depression just here. A reddish one. Yes, you're right. I remember it too. But now, the depression is completely empty. Where could the disc have gone? Alright, we've inspected the soap. Whoop. Clicked on the wrong window there. Let's inspect all of our evidence. This must be the cup that Mr. Shamspear was drinking from then. And it's stained on the inside. Tea does that, I'm afraid. Even green tea. Oh, really? I've never noticed before. You've never noticed? Well, I never leave it in the cup long enough to leave a mark. I like to gulp it down. Drink tea while it's hot. That's the Japanese way, isn't it? Oh dear! So many people seem to have the wrong idea about our culture, and most of them are Japanese. Alright. This is the teacup from which Mr. Natsume was drinking. Yes, unlike the other one, the inside of the cup is completely clean. I suppose he must have drunk the contents before the tea had a chance to leave a mark. I always gulp it down too. Sorry, Mr. Naruto. Well, if you just sip it little by little, it goes cold. Clearly, I shall have to instruct you in the proper way to take tea. Alright. We have updated our evidence. Little Pikachu tail. Whoever opened this envelope didn't bother with the letter opener or scissors, did they? Yes, whoever opened it was clearly someone with an unrefined temperament. And judging from the angle of the rip here, the person in question must have been right-handed. Miss Susato. And I think perhaps someone's been reading too much of the Adventures of Herlock Sholmes. You can never read too much of it, Mr. Naruto, never! Alright. Maybe... I'm gonna try again. I want to present this here.
Objection!
Alright, so I just pressed on the wrong one then. Mr. Natsume, you say it was 11 p.m. when you left to return to your room, correct?
Yes.
And Inspector Gregson, can we rely on the information in the medical report unconditionally? Of course we can! There's no problem with that report, Sunshine! Actually, I think there's a very big problem, because there's a chronological inconsistency between it and the defendant's testimony. What? What are you on about? And according to this report, the victim must have consumed the poison at around 1:30 in the morning, and yet, the defendant, Mr. Natsume, left the victim's room at 11. Ah! Yes, that's right. There's more than 2 hours of missing time there. In other words, if there was poison in the tea that Mr. Natsume brought to the victim's room, how could the victim have fallen ill to it 2.5 full hours after the defendant left? Ah!
The defense's argument is entirely reasonable. How do you respond, Lord Van Zeeks?
Now respond, my lord, by getting drunk in the courtroom. Pray forgive the discourtesy if my mind has wandered. I was considering what cuisine would best complement the contents of my hallowed chalice this luncheon. How could it have happened, you ask? I do hate to shatter illusions, but my Nipponese friend appears to be chasing a phantom idea. A phantom? The Phantom Return, Bobby Fulbright, what the heck? No, just... This is Ace Attorney memes. For context, it's an Ace Attorney meme. A character named the Phantom from Dual Destinies. Man, I wonder, how many of you guys have actually ever played or seen playthroughs of other Ace Attorney games? Let me know in the comment section down below. Because I know I've made a lot of references, of course. I know I've equated, I think 2 episodes or so ago, equated Strongheart to Damon Gantz from Rise from the Ashes 1-6. He reminds me of that character, that's why I don't trust him, he gives me the heebie-jeebies. I've talked about getting Mia'd. You know, of course, Cosma got Mia'd at the start of Game 1 here in the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. And so on and so forth. So I'm wondering if I'm just talking into an echo chamber of people like... I don't know what Allie said, but she laughed, so I'm gonna laugh too. So, let me know if you guys actually know what I'm talking about when I make random Ace Attorney references in the comments down below. I'm just curious. Not that, of course, you really need knowledge of any of the other games to play this. This is a super prequel of sorts. You know, Phoenix Wright's great ancestor, Ryunosuke Naruhodo, in Japan. So... no other context is required. It's just I'm seeing certain things that remind me of the way stuff has gone in other games. So I don't know. Like I said, I'm more predisposed to thinking Lord Strongheart is weird just based on vibes I've gotten from other characters and things like that. So I'm wondering, you know, if anyone else has that experience as well, or if this is your first time. If this is your first time checking out Ace Attorney, I hope you're having a great time. Definitely recommend you check out the other games in the series. I know some people in the comments, I believe, some of the first few episodes wanted me to go through the original trilogy, because of course there is the Steam version of that, with the remaster. I don't like the remastered art, I like the original pixels, but if that'd be something you guys would want to see, that would be a very, very big project, but I could do that here eventually. It's been a long time since I played through them, but just curious if you guys have any other prior experience with the Ace Attorney series or not. But anyways, back to Van Zeeks here. Is it so hard to imagine the victim drank his tea after the accused had left? For example, at the time stated in the medical report. Yes, at around 1:30.
Objection!
Mr. Natsume brought tea with him to drink together with his neighbor. And in Japan, there's a well-known saying, drink tea while it's hot.
Objection!
And in my country, there is an even more apt saying. There is nothing more refreshing than cold tea. The point is, if there was such a long gap, there may be other ways to explain how the victim came to be poisoned. Other possibilities.
What sort of possibilities, counsel?
Well, his room was covered in soap. That was pretty weird. We could start with that. Well, for example, the man could have had another visitor.
Another visitor?
That's a very bold assertion, my learned friend, from someone who has nothing to substantiate it. Or the victim could have taken the poison of his own volition.
You suggest this may have been a suicide, counsel?
Objection!
Mr. Shamspeare has categorically denied suicide. The idea can and must be discounted.
Objection!
But he could be lying.
Is something wrong, Lord Van Zeeks?
I was listening to the sound of the carriage pulling up outside the courtroom. Pray forgive the discourtesy. Carriage? What carriage? It would seem that the key player in this case has just arrived. Oh. See, I think I gave him more of an accented voice last time, but I think in the first game I gave him a super flamboyant voice. So I think I'll try that again. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow. Oh, jeez. A poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
Who, sir, are you?
William Shakespeare, my lord. Alas, 'twas I, undone by these bitter events. I am the victim.
What? What is he doing here? The prosecution seeks to call this gentleman to the stand. With his testimony, my learned friend's futile resistance will be utterly crushed. You're calling him as a witness?
Very well, counsel. I grant your request with interest. I'm curious to discover what the court shall hear from the victim himself.
Happy am I, Shakespeare, to regale thee with my tale of woe, my lord.
But I still have my own tale to tell, my own tale of worse woe. I can regale the courts with the tale of my perfect innocence in perfect English. That will do, Mr. Natsume. Let the court now hear from the victim.
I hate this guy's face. Hey, look, it's Popeye. Alright, so that's Mr. Shakespeare. But who's that other man beside him?
Yes, I think I feel sure that we've caught a glimpse of that man before.
State your names and occupations for the court, please, witnesses.
A writer of words so sweet, they do scent the breeze. An inventor of ideas so profound, they compose the earth. The unrivaled poet, the unmatched scribe, William Shakespeare. Were the great bard to be recalled to life anew, lo, what a magnificent man. Good fellows, I am he who ponders such a miracle, William Shakespeare.
Meter man. Adron B. Meter man? Adron B meter. What's the joke here? I've been noticing that a lot of these characters, I can't figure out what the memes are with their names. Usually it's just puns. But the name's Meter Man. Adron B Meter Man. I work for the Altamont Gas Company, East End branch office.
Ah! I remember now! It was yesterday on Briar Road!
Oh yeah, she's right, it's him. Oh, what's this? What's that man doing over there? He looks like he's trying to see into Soseki-san's lodgings.
Is something wrong, Mr. Naruhodo?
Excuse me, can we have a word? Ah. Yes, we spotted him outside Mr. Garrideb's house that morning. And he's a gas company employee. What does he have to do with this case?
So, Mr. William Shakespeare, you are the victim in this miserable affair, correct?
Oh heaven, oh hell, do you command me to remember? That sweet poison that didst cross me and cross mine innocent lips.
I subpoenaed him for the trial, with his doctor's permission, naturally. Hearing the testimony of the aggrieved will remove any room for doubt from the jurors' minds, I'm sure.
Behold, you have only to rearrange the letters of my name to see that me is a seraph, an angel indeed. Thus be I noble of mind, sweet of nature, and verily honest of heart, as all heavenly angels be.
Alright, this dude's super suspicious. Because there isn't a less contrived meaning in your name. No, not at all. The jurors seem to be very moved by this man, I'm afraid. They're actually taking the serif anagram seriously?
Thank you, witnesses, for your illuminating introductions.
But my lord, what's the man next to Mr. Shamspear doing here? The gas man, I mean.
What, me? Well, now.
Allow me to enlighten my learned friend. You recall, I presume, your earlier impertinence when you suggested that the victim had another visitor to his room on the night in question. And moreover, that the victim is a compulsive liar.
What? No, I didn't quite say that.
This young chin-stroker here is to controvert your wild claims conclusively. Is that not so, Mr. Meterman?
Hang on. No, I'm just here.
I hereby call you for your formal testimony. You will tell the court as lucidly as possible what happened on the night in question.
One may smile and be a villain.
Yes, it doth pain me, but let the truth be spoken, the truth of that wintry night of my discontent. I want to punch this guy in the face. That is a very, very punchable face. Hold on. Can I do this? This would be funny. I gotta get out my energy somehow. Are you an actual PNG? You're a fake PNG. Are you a PNG? No. What about you? No. You're a PNG. No, you're not. Yes, it is. Alright, save. Alright. You guys want to see Allie Big Brain? Hello. Chunmage. Alright. He has a very punchable face. I'm sorry, I don't make the rules. Alright, that's enough of that. Moving on. The wintry night of my discontent. The snow lay about. My neighbor did cometh in the evening, bearing a gift of tea. But marry, bitter was his drink, and when he left, I did fall prostrate on my table. 'Twas the tea alone did pass my lips that late hour, naught else.
I was outside this bloke's window in the freezing cold all night, keeping an eye on his room. No one else visited his room but that short little round-backed Eastern fella.
Alright, Popeye, thank you. Wait, what did you say? You were keeping an eye on Mr. Shamspear's room all night? It's kinda sus.
That's right. Of course, the bloke's window is all but blocked up, isn't it? And there's a little gap in the bricks where you can see into the room. So I spent the night trying to keep my teeth from chattering as I peered through that.
The question is, sir, why?
Well, now that's because he's on my list.
What a piece of work is a man! Wherefore wouldst thou not stare in wonderment? What are you talking about? This buzzing busybody hath not part in this play. I pray thee, pay him no heed, make no more ado about his tedious words.
What did you say about me?
Calm yourself. This court is concerned with what happened on the night in question. Nothing more. Indeed, that is so. And, as the testimony we have just heard clearly reveals, there was no one other than the accused present at the time who could have carried out this crime. Well, I believe this may be the final testimony of the trial. Now, counsel, the defense may proceed with the cross-examination.
Yes, my lord.
Bearing a gift of tea.
To be clear, by neighbor, you are referring to the defendant, Mr. Natsume.
Oh, indeed, sire. Perchance thou wouldst call that I call the man from upstairs.
And at what time did the mustached Nipponese visit you in your room?
Our meeting was promised for the hour of 9, and lo, did he come to tender a gift of fragrant tea.
Details which are in accordance with the defendant's own testimony, yes.
And we were broiled in such a literary debate as history hath not seen before.
By which I presume he means...
Their discussion about who was the stronger, Romeo or Juliet? I, Shakespeare, did play the part of young Romeo, whilst my neighbour played the fair Juliet. Each of us dressed as would our characters be, to bring weight upon our merry experiment.
I dare not imagine the scene.
Frailty, thy name is woman. Canst thou imagine how dismayed I was? Yes, I had heard of the eastern art of jiu-jitsu, but ne'er did I dream 'twould be a skill practiced by the comely maiden.
Juliet beat Romeo up? This is not helping our case. I believe the court has heard enough about your earth-shattering literary debate. Perhaps you could reiterate your statement about the tea that the accused brought to your room?
My liege, I am thy servant. Gladly I would do thy bidding.
Hold it!
Let me stop you there. Mr. Natsume left your room at 11 o'clock, but it wasn't until after 2 that the poison made you collapse. That amounts to more than 3 hours of missing time. Bro, what are you doing? Why is everybody in this game so groovy? If the defendant had really put the poison into your tea, that 3-hour window of time is something you're going to have to explain.
Gladly, 'tis an easy task.
What?
I did drink of the tea, not while my guest did tarry, but after he took leave of me. Faith, 'twas stone cold, but at 1 hour post midnight. Verily, were my lips parched.
Objection!
That doesn't sound normal.
Nay, 'tis quite ordinary, sire. After all, thou wouldst recall our fiery debate. Amid such argument there'd be no time for fiery tea.
Romeo and Juliet again. And who was stronger? Mr. Shakespeare, in summary, allow me to confirm. Did you not come here with the intention of naming your attacker?
But of course, my liege. 'Twas the stupid lover of words did attempt to shuffle me off this mortal coil.
We all know what that means.
Hold it!
So, you didn't have any kind of evening meal? Dinner? Supper?
Ha! Fee on luxury, fee on gluttony. To eat thrice daily is but a waste of time.
Sorry.
I would that my belly were full. No more oft than the sun doth rise.
Well, most heroic eating habits, I must say.
Night and day do I fill my hours with learned study of the great bard and playwright. Hence, it is that there doth not in my chamber be than the costumes of mine art.
That would appear to be the case, as even a rodent was found starved to death in your room.
Now that I think of it, it's not just food that was conspicuously missing from that room, is it? I don't recall seeing a single play or script anywhere. For I have devoured them all.
What? You've eaten them?
Every word be within my skull. Didst thou imagine otherwise?
Right, that wasn't misleading at all. Now, could you turn around, do you think? Which brings us to the conclusion that the only way the poison could have passed the victim's lips is in the tea. I was outside this bloke's window in the freezing cold all night, keeping an eye on his room. Yeah, but why?
Hold it!
Why? But the windows of that house have all been filled in.
The historical artifact of the now defunct window tax.
Yeah, you're right there. All bricked up horribly. But, as it happens, there's a little part of the brickwork at the bottom corner that's been opened up. I was looking in through the gap. How does this dude not have a ton of chin acne? Dude, stop touching your face. It's stressing me out.
Yes, there were a few bricks loose, weren't there?
And for some strange reason, a couple of bars of soap lined up on the ledge outside as well. I don't like going around poking my chin in other people's business, especially on freezing cold nights. Well, that's my orders. So that's what I'll keep doing, as long as there's breath in my body. What's with all the theatricals today? Out of interest, Mr. Meterman, after the accused had left and returned to his own lodgings, did you see the victim leave the room at all? No, he never left. He was in that room the whole time as far as I'm concerned. And we can therefore discount the possibility of suicide. How can you be sure of that? The police carried out a thorough investigation of the scene and found no receptacle for the poison. In such we know the victim didn't leave his room, and hence didn't dispose of the poison's container himself. It's clear that this was no attempted suicide. Only the culprit could have removed the receptacle.
Ah, yes. Lucidly explained, counsel, thank you.
It really was. You can't argue with the logic. No one else visited his room but that short little round-back Eastern fella.
Hold it!
You say a short little round-back Eastern fella? So you can't be sure it was the defendant then?
Objection!
How many other short little round-back nippies with a mustache do you think there are in London? Well, of course, it's only a narrow gap and it was quite dark, so I didn't notice the mustache. But he showed up at around 9, so I'm pretty sure of myself. And when the person you saw arrived, did he and Mr. Shamspear drink tea together? Nah, sorry, I couldn't say. Why not? Because I couldn't see into the room all that well, could I? Well, what I did see was the silhouette of that little roundback fellow wearing a pretty dress. Then the pair of them started some kind of wrestling match. I tell you, I didn't know what to make of it.
I suppose that was the Romeo and Juliet championship battle getting underway.
Mr. Meterman, allow me to confirm one final time. Apart from the accused, can you state with certainty that no one else visited the victim on the night in question? No question. Gasman's honor.
My lord! Goodness me, yes, Mr. Foreman.
I've kept my mouth shut and listened up to now, but this has gone on long enough. Are you all with me?
Yes!
Are we to understand that you ladies and gentlemen of the jury are in agreement with one another? That you've reached a unanimous decision? Too right, we have. Are you all with me?
Yes!
Wait, no. The defense is in the middle of a cross-examination. To be honest, I was holding out a bit of hope for you, young man. Especially after you identified those few hours that followed the accused leaving the victim's room.
Yes, the 3 missing hours, as you put it.
But in the end, what difference do they make? None as far as I can see.
And since that is now apparent, there's really no reason to delay our decision any longer.
Like I was saying before, if I don't take Fat Bob home with me tonight, the missus will blow her top.
What was that? Sorry, I didn't quite catch what you said. Very well, let the court be apprised of your decisions. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will state your leanings as to the defendant's culpability.
Guilty!
Guilty. Guilty. Guilty.
Guilty. Guilty.
All of you?
Well, it would appear that the jury is indeed unanimous.
So, this time at least, it seems justice will be done. All's well that ends well, as they say. This calls for a toast, I feel. To the guilty being punished. Ah!
Get up, Mr. Naruhodo, please! The trial isn't over yet!
What do you mean, Miss Susato?
Did you forget, you silly goose? We have a summation examination! What about the information they found in this encyclopedia of British law I have? That obscure right that belongs to the defense in these situations. Remember?
The summation examination. Yes, that's right. We don't have a jury in Japanese courts, of course. But here in a British court of law, if we can reverse the decisions of a majority of the jurors, we can force the trial to continue. This trial can't end now. Whatever it takes, I just can't let that happen. The defense moves to invoke its right to a summation examination, my lord. Why am I not surprised at my learned Nipponese friend's inability to admit defeat? You choose to cling desperately to some archaic rule you barely comprehend instead of accepting the truth.
Certainly no other defense counsel in recent times has exercised the right to a summation examination.
Because they all know that once the jury's mind is set, it cannot be altered.
Nevertheless, the right remains and must be upheld. The defense counsel's request is granted. This court will proceed with a summation examination as outlined in the Encyclopedia of British Law.
Thank you, my lord.
Are you and your fellows prepared, Mr. Foreman?
Believe me, my lord, we know all about this young lad's tenacity. And we're ready for it.
Very well. In that case, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I hereby call upon each of you to state the grounds upon which you find the defendant guilty of the crime for which he stands accused.
The victim may not be well off, but he's a noble man and straight up. There's no reason to doubt the man.
Well, I do declare the good gentleman has no reason to lie. In fact, I think he's rather splendid.
Just look at the accused by comparison. He's Japanese, stoops all the while, and has a mustache. Very fishy.
There's no evidence to suggest the gangling actor is a fraudsman. For now, at least.
I really don't care. Just need this trial to end quickly.
3 hours of missing time is nothing when you reach my age, you know. Nothing at all.
Those are great reasons to vote guilty. I know every single one of them seems completely convinced.
It would seem that all the jurors have come to the conclusion that Mr. Shamspear is a fine, upstanding, and honest citizen.
If you ask me, they've all been bewitched by his strange theatrical movements.
And sadly, nothing Mr. Natsume has said appears to have registered at all.
Well, here goes. Let's not forget. I've pleaded with the jury on Soseki-san's behalf before, and it worked. So you never know.
Before we begin, it might be an idea for me to remind you exactly how a summation examination works, Mr. Naruhodo.
Oh.
Well, you're still very new to British law, after all.
That's true, I suppose. And Soseki-san's fate is entirely in my hands now, too. And there's always a chance I might have forgotten some crucial detail. Perhaps I should hear Susato-san out. And I wonder, should I let her talk me through it again, or not bother? I think we're good, Susato. Thank you, though. Thank you for the kind offer, Miss Susato. But I've been through plenty of these summation examinations already now. And I think it's important that we don't delay the start any longer than necessary.
Of course, I understand. I'm quite sure you're right. If you're confused by anything at any point, you can turn to me for advice whenever you like. I'll be here for you.
And the key to this is really listening carefully to each juror's statement. Finding two that are contradictory, and pitting the corresponding jurors against each other.
Without further ado, please, counsel, proceed with the summation examination.
Yes, my lord. Well, there are plenty of people in London who seem noble but poor. Couldn't some of them also be liars? I've no doubt about it. Like that shaky client of yours, for example. Absolutely not. Mr. Natsume's no liar. Look, point is, the only thing that's passed the victim's lips that night was the Japanese man's tea. When you take the gas man's testimony into account as well, the truth couldn't be any clearer. Ah, well, that's alarmingly logical. But let me be frank here. I'm a gentleman, with a gentleman's values. If it turns out that the old Shakespearean chum is a rotten liar after all, I'd gladly change my decision about the defendant. And I'm sure my fellow gentlemen on the jury would do the same. Isn't that right? Well, yes, perhaps. Though I don't see it happening.
What's that? Elderly gentleman here, you know. You'll have to speak up.
Look, I really don't care about all this nonsense. I just need this trial to be over. How many gentlemen do we actually have on the jury, then? All right, sir. I may hold you to that. Don't forget what you said. All right, if you could show me that the victim's a liar, I'll reconsider my position.
Hold it!
Are you saying you believe the man to be trustworthy because he's rather splendid?
No, that's not what I said. Point is, the man is the victim here. What reason would he have to lie? And yes, he is rather splendid.
So you say, yet again.
Meanwhile, the man who stands accused behaves so suspiciously it's exhausting to look at him. I'm afraid he's not splendid at all.
Splendid logic there, madam. Thank you so much. Just look at the accused.
Hold it!
No, not one of those things is a reason to find the man guilty. But he is fishy. There's no point dancing around the fact he's Japanese, he has a mustache, and he stoops. You see, you arrive at the conclusion in just 3 steps. 3 steps, like a waltz, in fact. You know, the more I think about it, the more this trial seems like a dance. You seem to be several steps ahead of yourself, though, and you're on the wrong foot. No, there's nothing but circumstantial evidence here. There's no actual proof of the defendant's guilt. But the victim's version of events is backed up by what the big chin man next to him says, isn't it? 1, he saw the Japanese man there. 2, he saw no one else. And 3, he saw the Japanese man there. Oh, that's another 3 steps. All this really does seem more like a waltz, doesn't it? Right, and the prosecution will waltz its way to victory if I let you speak much more.
Hold it!
A fraudsman? What do you mean by that, madam?
Really is a most tiresome problem for the company. Most irritating. We can be absolutely certain that a customer is stealing from us, but without hard evidence, we can't even threaten to take action for fear of being sued.
I'm sorry, you've lost me a little there. Who are you?
I'm the wife of Augustus Altamont, owner of the Altamont Gas Company.
Good gracious, Altamont Gas, you say?
Gas is the future of energy in this country and around the globe, but proper handling is essential. As I'm sure our employee from the East End branch office would be the first to agree.
Absolutely, Lady Quinby. Gotta be used properly. Altamont Gas is the best in the world, of course.
I think we may have solved the mystery of the bow from earlier, Mr. Naruhodo.
Right, he bowed in deference to his employer's wife, did he? Ah, so, would I be right in assuming that the reason Mr. Meterman was watching what Mr. Shamspeare was up to in his room?
I'm afraid that there's no end to the lengths the population of the East End will go in order to steal our gas. So I really have no choice when the company identifies somebody as a possible fraudsman, but to dispatch a worker to watch the suspect day and night. We're very thorough in our investigations.
So you mean Mr. Shamspeare is...
I wouldn't come out and say it in public, but you can finish that sentence with a grubby little gas thief.
You have noticed the public gallery in here, have you? The eye of man hath not heard, the ear of man hath not seen. Faith, wouldst thou wound me with thy words, were I to let them penetrate the skin? But serfs hear not insults,
only choirs of angels in song. We may not have evidence yet, but my workers won't stop buzzing around you until they find it. And when they do, you'll find yourself blasted back to your angelic heights in an Altamont gas explosion.
So Mr. Shamspear has been stealing gas. And I wonder, juror number 4, if you wouldn't mind adding that information to your statements.
My pleasure. Was it the bit about ripping that thief apart you enjoyed?
A little before the part about abject violence, if it's not too much trouble. I wonder if he was making coins with the soap.
Yes, of course.
And then putting the soap coins in the machine. This could be it. This could shift the balance. Alright.
Objection!
These two statements clearly contradict each other.
Good gracious! To whose statements do you refer, counsel?
Juror number 1. Eh? What are you yelling about, lad? I presume you've heard juror number 4's statements, made by the wife of the owner of Altamont Gas. Well, yes. The victim, who you claim to be a noble, straight-up man, in fact, turns out to be a common thief. So the good lady says, but there's no evidence, is there? You and I both heard them say as much.
It's true, we don't have evidence as such, just yet.
But the claims are baseless, you know.
What? You heard me, seeing as his operation has already been compromised.
I would suggest that the court hears testimony from our East End branch office employee over there. I'll do whatever you say, my lady. Gasman's honor. Juror number 1, you say you're a man of your word. If I could show that Mr. Shamspear was a liar, you assured me that you would reconsider your decision about the defendant's guilt. Yes, I did say that. And as a man of my honor, I'll hold to it, as I'm sure the other gentlemen of the jury will. Me? Oh, well, yes. Now that we've found out the man's a liar, perhaps we ought to consider the matter further.
Well, if I'm perfectly honest, I haven't heard half of what you've all been saying. So if this means you'll recap a few points, that would suit me down to the ground.
Oh no, I'm not having any part of this. I want this trial over and done with.
In that case, I shall change my leaning.
So, Mr. William Shamspear, if that is your real name,
we of the jury demand to know exactly what kind of a man you really are. That's 4 jurors. 4 for not guilty.
Yes, Mr. Naruhodo. Victory!
Order! Well, this is quite extraordinary, I must say. As a result of the defense's summation examination, the jury's leaning has changed. Now only 2 jurors say guilty, whilst 4 say not guilty. I therefore declare this court to be in a state of disaccord, and order the trial to continue.
You have spoilt the bouquet, Mr. Shamspear. The ladies and gentlemen of the jury now find they are unable to trust you, the victim.
But you gods will give us some faults to make us men. So God mend me, I do swear. This gasman speaketh that which concerns him most, naught but gas, naught but thin air. Ay, it burneth bright and wild, but it hath no substance, and it doth reek foul.
Oi, what did you say?
Do I take it, Mr. Shamspear, that you deny the allegations of gas thievery?
Most heartily, my lord. Hast thou forgot I am a seraph, an angel, noble of mind, sweet of nature, and verily, honest of heart?
You flowery-mouthed pompous beanpole. Just because I haven't got the evidence yet. Mr. Shamspear, if, in fact, you are not noble of mind, sweet of nature, or honest of heart, if you are a liar, then your testimony should have no sway in this courtroom.
It is my considered opinion that at the present time no other possible culprit of this crime has been identified. All testimony heard by the court thus far heavily implicates the defendant. In short, it would not be unreasonable at this stage for me to rule on the case.
Oh no!
However, in light of the fact that the jury has expressed concern about the fidelity of this witness, I believe it would be inappropriate for this court not to pursue the point further.
Objection!
I assure you, my lord, that would be a waste of the court's time. The gas in this case are unrelated. Juror number 4.
Yes?
Didn't you say before that although you had no hard evidence to prove this man has been stealing gas, you have strong grounds for suspecting him?
That's right, we do. Don't we, worker?
Absolutely, Lady Quinby. Gas man's honor.
Very well then, we will hear your testimony now. You will tell the court precisely why you believe the victim, Mr. William Shamspear, has been stealing gas.
Yes, my lord, it'll be my pleasure. On the ultimate gas's name.
If I may, my lord?
Go ahead, madam.
This worker's testimony may have a significant bearing on the good name of my husband's company. Therefore, I should like to take the stand alongside him in a supervisory role, if you wouldn't mind.
Wahoo, oh yeah, sweet as honey. Yeah. Very well. As an exception, I shall honor your request.
Thank you, my lord.
You wait till the boss gives you an earful. Ooh, it's gonna sting, you mark my words.
So you will both testify before the court on the subject of the illegal consumption of the Altamont Gas Company's fuel.
Yes? Is that clear, my good man?
Clear as Altamont gas, my lady. Which is the clearest in the world. Do you think the gas has gone to his head, Miss Susato?
I think the man is just a very dedicated employee, Mr. Naruto.
Alright, the gas company's investigation. And I'm proud to be the company's East End branch investigator and meter money collection agent. Altamont gas meters accept threepenny bits, each coin giving customers about 2 hours of gorgeous gas.
And yet, the meter in Mr. Shamspear's room didn't have a single coin in it. The meter doesn't appear to have been tampered with, though, and the collection agent is only the key.
Somehow he's using all the flaming gas he wants without paying a penny. If that's not thieving, what is? Pray forgive the discourtesy. The irrelevance of this testimony caused me to turn to my hallowed chalice.
What do you mean by that remark, Lord Van Zeeks?
Did the mustached Nipponese poison the gangling excuse for an actor, or didn't he? That is all that should concern this court, and yet now we must listen to this abhorrence. Clearly, what separates the vast British Empire and your eastern island nation is more than a geographical distance. But this could turn out to be crucial testimony. The cross-examination must go ahead. Do what you will.
Lord Van Zeeks appears to be in a violent mood.
Yes, he does. An attempted poisoning, and an incidence of gas theft with no supporting evidence. And it's true that they would appear completely unrelated at first glance. But I wonder, the truth tends to be buried in the most unusual places. And the first step in uncovering it will be to establish just who and what this man really is.
Hold it!
So does that mean you enter people's houses in order to empty their gas meters? That I do. Have to try and catch people when they're in. Then I ask permission to come inside and do my business. Does that mean you've been into Mr. Natsume's room before as well as that of Mr. Shamspear? Well now, interested you should bring that up, because I couldn't believe how little money was in his meter. I mean, how the pair of them survived the winter is beyond me, it really is.
Knowing Mr. Natsume, he probably spends all his gas money on books.
And then when he's finished reading them, he probably burns them for warmth.
You will kindly reiterate your statement about the gas meters themselves, Mr. Meter Man.
Not much to say really, but as you wish.
Hold it!
So all London houses that have a gas supply are fitted with these gas meters, are they?
They're the latest model, the height of technology, developed by our company, Altamont Gas. And anyone who uses our gas will have one of these meters in their property, yes.
So if a 3-pence coin gives 2 hours of gas, most people would use about 3 coins in a night. A bit more than that, usually. If they have both gas lights and a gas stove, that is. Thinking about it, Soseki-san doesn't have a fireplace in that room of his, does he?
Some people still choose to use candles, of course, and only have gas for heating. Ah yes, I do remember seeing candles in Mr. Natsume's room, actually.
And how does the money in the meter get back to you at the gas company? Every 3 days, gasmen like me visit properties on the gas supply and empty the meters of coins.
I must say, the design and manufacture of the new meter cost the company an awful lot of money. But happily, it did put a stop to people not paying their dues, for the most part.
Ah, because they have to pay in advance, you mean?
Yes, exactly right. And yet, the meter in Mr. Shamspear's room didn't have a single coin in it.
Hold it!
Out of interest, how long has this been going on? Weeks and weeks. He's been pinching gas off of us for ages.
And you've examined the meter in Mr. Shamspear's room, I take it?
Naturally, we took it off the wall and went over it with a fine-tooth comb.
And found nothing suspicious at all, I presume?
No, I'm afraid we didn't. Which is exactly why I demand a new type of meter to be produced. One with an indestructible lock. The Shamspear Special.
That sounds like it would have cost an awful lot of 3-penny pieces.
But even after all that, the rascal's meter was still empty.
And I'll never forget the humiliation when I opened up the money box and found it bare. "You what?" I said. "You what?" The look on his face, that smarmy smile of his. And I pulled the meter straight off the wall and took it back to the office. But you know what? Nothing. Not a trace of it being jimmied open anywhere. Not a single sign. And what's happening to my salary as a result? Down by 3 shillings a day, that's what. A life-threatening situation in a number of ways. Incidentally, what became of that meter? Nothing became of it. I've still got it. Oh. Right here. No wonder they call you Meter Man.
I think it would be prudent for the court to sequester this item while the trial is ongoing.
Alright, gas meter. Definitely. Although at first glance, there doesn't appear to be anything unusual about it. Let's move this along, shall we? Continue with your testimony. Though I would say it has as much value as the contents of that meter. Oof. Alright, let's investigate the meter. That's a very sturdy looking padlock, isn't it?
And the money box is sealed with beeswax, too.
So if Mr. Sholmes were to get up to any mischief, he'd be found out immediately.
Mr. Naruhodo, mischief of that kind is not the sort of thing that Mr. Sholmes would do.
You know you didn't finish that sentence, don't you?
Well, anyway, it's understandable that the gas company would want to safeguard the money that's rightfully theirs.
But it does feel a little over the top, perhaps, doesn't it? Look at these holes. Oh. Oh, have you spotted something, Mr. Naruto? Just here, there's a little hole. Do you see? Goodness, you're right. I wouldn't have noticed. It's not a very neat hole, is it? Not professionally made, I'd say. So you think it might have been opened by Mr. Shamspear? Possibly. It seems the people at Altamont Gas must have missed it. Well, it certainly seems to go all the way through to the inside. Yes, but there's no way a coin could fit through there. That's true, but even so, it seems a little more than suspicious. Alright.
Hold it!
There's only one key for all of your meters. Well, in truth, there's another key in the company vault at our main office. But even if someone had somehow managed to get a hold of a key, we'd know if the coin box had been opened. Oh, how? I came up with a rather clever way to expose any little shenanigans as it happens. Would you care to explain? Well now, in order to empty a meter, you have to unlock the padlock and remove the cover. When I close the cover again, I stick a little beeswax seal on it, you see? And the seal, like the sort of thing you'd put on an envelope, you mean? Something like that, yes. Basically, you can't remove the cover again without breaking the seal. Now, in the case of Mr. Shamspear's meter, there were no coins inside at all, as I said. But the seal hadn't been broken either. So that would mean Mr. Shamspear somehow managed to steal coins from inside the meter without opening it. It would seem so, but that would be impossible.
Hold it!
How do you know that he's been using gas, though? Well now, since I started investigating this bloke, I've been to his room more than a few times. And on every single occasion, his lamps have been blazing and his stove pounding. It's the middle of winter, and he still turns to me, sweat dripping down his cheeks, and says, "Get thee to a nunnery."
Hamlet, indeed.
Nah, I could wring the bloke's neck. If I get all hot under the collar, but still, every time I open up that flaming meter, it's empty. He's robbing me of my salary, too. What's wrong with the world? Where's the justice? But how could Mr. Shamspear possibly be stealing the money? I don't understand. The simple explanation is right before your eyes. What? A toast to your eventually realizing that the gas man could be an accomplice. You what?
Good lord, eminently plausible indeed.
Well, what do you have to say for yourself? Oh, please, Lady Quinby. I'm a faithful worker. And besides, if the money us gasmen collect doesn't tally with how much gas has been used, you dock our pay by the same amount. So you'd be stealing money only to have the same amount taken from your wages. Clearly, that makes no sense. Perhaps it's a case of losing the battle to win the war? No, no, no. I'm not gonna stir up that hornet's nest. If I went stealing from the company, I'd be finished. It would seem there is no evidence to support the claims of thievery made against the victim, because Mr. William Shamspear is innocent. Pray, forgive me if that shatters some illusion my learned Nipponese friend was clearly under. Ugh. And I certainly didn't expect to uncover another crime that looks like it's been taking place in the very same room. According to the testimony, it's only the meter in Mr. Shamspear's room that's under suspicion. It does seem as though perhaps it has nothing to do with the incident involving Mr. Natsume. I know, it does seem that way, but the fact is, since I've been practicing law in England, I feel like I've encountered this at least once already. Cases that are interlinked. Oh! It might seem that two cases have nothing to do with one another at first, but in fact, they're intimately connected. Yes, we have experienced that before, haven't we? I wonder if this is another instance. Perhaps, but we can't be sure of that yet. If the Altamont Gas Company has been investigating Mr. Shamspear so earnestly, there must be something to it. But then, how has he been managing to steal their gas? Alright, I'm gonna present. Because there's a hole in it. We've discovered a hole.
Objection!
Lady Altamont, I'm afraid to say... that this meter clearly does show signs of having been tampered with. What? Get away. I've been over and over that thing. I'm telling you, there's nothing wrong with it. In that case, what do you have to say about the small hole that's been made at the base of the coin box? Hole? What? You're right. You're quite right. There's a little hole there. The meters aren't supposed to have that. None of the others do. In other words, we can assume that Mr. Shamspear secretly opened up this hole himself. Yes, I wouldn't be at all surprised. But why? Yeah, why? I mean, it's tiny. You couldn't get a farthing through that. Lady Altamont, I wonder if you could give the court some more details about your meter design. What sort of details? Well, what I'd specifically like to know is... let's see how it differentiates the coins. How does the meter tell the difference between different coins? What do you mean? Well, for example, if someone were to put in 1 penny coin, that wouldn't work, presumably, would it? No, of course not. So, well, how does the meter know that the coin it's been fed is a threepenny bit? Ah, I see what you're getting at now. The meter tells coins apart by their shape and size, which includes their thickness. A threepenny bit is about 3/4 of an inch in diameter, you see. Other coins just won't fit. Ah, I see. It's clearly been very well thought out.
The witness will amend her formal testimony with that information in case it is pertinent.
As you wish, my lord. The meter is designed for coins the exact diameter and thickness of a threepenny bit. Nothing else will fit.
Hold it!
But conversely then, it would seem that anything matching a 3-pence coin in exactly in terms of diameter and thickness could equally well be used. Would, that be true?
Well, yes, in a way. The weight comes into it a certain extent as well.
We've thought of that through anyway. If I find any fake coins inside the coin box when I empty the meter, the contract says the customer has to pay 100 times the amount they diddle as a fine. Well, you live for moments like that, as gasmen do. Live for them. Ha ha ha.
It would seem the gas company has thought of everything.
Wahoo! Hurrah for gas, hurrah for cash. Ultimate all the way.
That's quite enough of that.
Remind me, how big are the threepenny bits?
About 3/4 of an inch across. What do you think, Mr. Naruhodo? Is this 2 centimeters measurement significant? Or perhaps there's some other aspect of the meter's construction that we should be focusing on?
Yes, you may be right. Perhaps I should try a different track here. Like asking about whether the meter can be dismantled, for example. Let's delve deeper. How can the meter be dismantled?
Dismantled?
Yes, given that there are no signs of it having been forced. I'm wondering if perhaps rather than being broken open, it might have been taken apart.
Well, yes, that does make some sense. The padlocks are made by a first-class locksmith from the finest quality of steel. And the meter box itself is made from plate of steel as well, welded shut to ensure it can't be opened again. I can assure you, it's quite impossible to dismantle it.
Wahoo, yeah, nothing leaks from an Altamont meter. No coins, no gas, no nothing. Except melted soap, haha. I see. Right, and put it in soap coins, and then he melts the coins, and it drips out, so there's nothing in there, and then he just makes another coin.
The witness will amend her formal testimony with that information in case it is pertinent.
As you wish, my lord.
Hold it!
Has anyone ever tried? Oh yeah, they've tried, but they've all given up before long.
After all, if they actually broke the meter, the company would be able to take legal action.
Yes, that makes sense.
What do you think, Mr. Naruhodo? Is it welded steel construction significant? Or perhaps there's some other aspect of the meter's construction that we should be focusing on?
Yes, you may be right. Perhaps I should try a different tack here. Like asking about how the meter differentiates coins, for example. Alright, so I think when I switched the size, it took away the other one. So I'm gonna run through this again. Alright. I want to present the soap. Can I present the soap here?
Objection!
No, that did nothing. Okay, cool. Yes, undeniably.
You say it's undeniable, Counsel, but I failed to see any contradiction here at all.
I think perhaps that itself is the contradiction. Ha ha ha.
Indeed. Penalty.
Time for a rethink. Alright. Let's see what Susato has to say. Now, I certainly didn't expect to uncover another crime that looks like it's been taking place in the very same room.
According to the testimony.
Alright. I'll look at the court record. Oh, look at this bar of soap. There's a circular depression on this side, about 2 centimeters across.
Or 3/4 of an inch. Ah, do you think?
We did find this soap at the scene, didn't we?
Yes, there were 2 bars on that little ledge just outside the window. So we took this one. But I'm sure that when we first found it, there was some sort of reddish medallion in the middle there. I remember it clearly.
Yes, but there's no sign of it now. Where could it have gone? Alright. I had to fix the soap.
Objection!
Let me just confirm something here. If the diameter and thickness were to be correct, the meter would accept any object as if it were a threepenny bits. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Well, by something of a coincidence, while we were investigating in Mr. Shamspeare's room, we found a particular item that matches the dimensions perfectly.
Something the same size as a threepenny bit. What was it?
The item in question is this.
What?
Have you been inhaling gas? That's a bar soap.
It certainly looks nothing like a threepenny bit, I must say.
It looks like I'm going to have to point out exactly what I mean here. What's so important about the soap is this part here.
Got it!
You have to turn over the soap to see what I mean.
Ah! Are you referring to that round depression in the middle of the soap there?
That's right, it's a depression that's approximately 3/4 of an inch in diameter. Or in other words, almost exactly the same size as a threepenny bit. Get away.
Does anyone here present have in their possession a threepenny bit? Quickly now, hand over your coins, ladies and gentlemen.
It sounds rather like a highway robbery, doesn't it?
Next to a kind member of the public in the gallery, I here have a threepenny bit. Now, to see if it fits. My word, it couldn't be more snug.
Yes, as I suspected. This, without a doubt, is a vital clue to explain how the Altamont Gas Company is being defrauded.
Well, I don't believe it.
So, your assertion amounts to what? That some inferior bar of soap has a tentative connection to the theft of gas? Yes. The depression in the soap was clearly made by a threepenny bit.
I must concur, at least, that pushing a coin with some force into a poor quality bar of soap such as this is a remarkably simple way of replicating the coin's shape.
And then you could use, well, some melted wax or something to pour into the mold. You could make fake coins in no time. This brings all the pieces of the puzzle together. It's the method Mr. Shamspear has been using to steal the gas. That's the missing link. And now, if I follow the chain of thought, it's going to bring me to a new explanation for what happened that nobody's considered yet. But this is all nonsense. If the man had been making fake coins, my worker here would have found them when he emptied the meter.
Quite true, Lady Altamont. In the absence of some black magic that could make them disappear.
I see. That's what we're dealing with, is it? There's one form of black magic that could cause the fake coins to disappear into thin air, yes. Exactly, and the meter here gives it away.
What on earth?
There are remnants of this magical method used visible on the gas meter taken from the victim's room.
If that is your assertion, counsel, the defense will identify these remnants for the court at once. Where on the meter can the remnants of the method used to make the fake coins disappear be seen?
The hole.
Got it!
We found this bar of soap at the scene of the crime, just outside the victim's window. Outside? Yes, outside, where yourself, Mr. Meterman, were loitering in the freezing winter air. That's where we found this soap. I get it. That's right. The answer, of course, is ice.
Did you say ice?
Mr. Shamspear has been leaving soaps like this outside his window each evening, filled with water. After a night outside in the bitter cold, the water is completely frozen solid the next morning. Then he takes his fake coins of ice and feeds them into the gas meter, giving him light and warmth in spades. His room becomes very comfortably warm. The ice now inside the meter coin box melts, turning back into water and draining harmlessly away through the small hole made in the underside of the meter. That is how, without leaving any evidence of his wrongdoing, this man has been stealing Altamont gas.
Just like that, so simply. Is he trying to make us look like idiots? He's been fooling us all with some bars of soap and some water.
That's right, madam.
I don't believe it. It can't be true. Do you have any idea how much money we spent to develop that new meter? And now you have the audacity to suggest that a bit of soap and water can render it totally useless?
I'm fairly sure I didn't design it.
Evidence. Sorry? I want evidence. If you're going to stand there and tell me our meters are rubbish, I want to see proof. She's very good at enforcing accountability, isn't she?
Very well, Lady Altamont. If you'd like evidence, I'll provide it.
What? Mr. Naruhodo, are you saying? Do you actually have evidence to support this theory?
I did notice a trace of something that bothered me a little at the time. And I have a feeling that this theory we've come up with now could explain it. The piece of evidence that substantiates the theory about how Mr. Shamspear has been stealing gas is the photo where there's a weird splotch of water underneath the gas meter.
Take that!
And I was like, hey, this is weird. Big brain, I figured it out. First glance, figured it out. This is a photograph of the scene at the point when the victim was discovered, taken by Inspector Gregson. And it clearly shows the remnants of the crime carried out by Mr. Shamspear. What remnants? Here you can see the gas meter on the wall in Mr. Shamspear's room. Now, look closely at the floorboards directly underneath the meter.
What? What is that? Some kind of grubby stain?
Almost certainly. It's a water stain resulting from the liquid that drained out of the hole made in the meter.
Ah!
If one coin gives around 2 hours of gas usage and the occupant was heating his room in all his waking hours, we can imagine he would have used around 10 of his fake coins each day. The melting ice inside the meter's coin box would have been dripping out almost constantly, leaving a stain on the floor.
This is awful.
And there's further evidence too. Mr. Shamspear slumped over his table, apparently having consumed strychnine. And right there next to him is a bar of soap, broken in half. You're right!
It would appear to me then, counsel, that the man was eating the soap, was he?
Pardon me for disagreeing with your lordship, but... certainly not.
He didn't beat around the bush there, did he?
In truth, Mr. Shamspear was found with a fork in his hand.
A meal of soap is sounding increasingly likely, Lord Van Zeeks.
Do you mean to say he was using that fork to... Yes. To extract a frozen coin from the bar of soap.
Ah! But the bar broke in half. So perhaps it didn't go very well.
Good gracious!
Van Zeeks is like, why are we solving petty theft? We're supposed to be solving a murder case. Why are we solving a crime case? Lord Van Zeeks! I was throwing my hand up in despair, and happened to catch my hollowed bottle on the way. Pray forgive my melodrama mistake.
What is the meaning of this, counsel?
Allow me to pose my learned friend a question. What exactly did you establish with your most recent cross-examination? Well...
that Mr. William Shamspear is a liar and a thief. In other words, that his testimony is unreliable.
That's it! That's exactly it! Very well, let us assume that the man is a liar. Now, allow me to pose another question. What possible difference does that make? Well, we know that suicide can be discounted. Scotland Yard's investigation revealed no signs of another vessel that contained poison. And on the night in question, there were no visitors to the room except the accused. The young gasman's testimony, which we have no reason to doubt, has confirmed that. Furthermore, the only possible way the poison could have entered the victim's body is via the tea. The court has seen no evidence whatsoever that suggests otherwise. Even if William Shamspear is the liar you claim him to be, these facts have been objectively established. There's no escaping it. Why was the coin red? I feel like that's important. Therefore, in light of these facts, the prosecution calls for immediate adjudication. You... What?
Order! Order! Well, counsel, how does the defense respond?
Mr. Naruhodo!
What was the point of that last cross-examination? Did it actually get us anywhere? Or did it make no difference at all, like Lord Van Zeeks is saying? You raise an objection. I think it's important. No, this isn't over. The defense will not rest. What?
But counsel, you've successfully explained everything. You've identified and substantiated the unscrupulous method employed by Mr. Shamspear to consume gas. What more is there to discuss?
Lord Van Zeeks just highlighted 3 facts in order to make his point. But contrary to what he would have the court believe, not all of them have been objectively established at all. What are you trying to say, my Nipponese friend? At least one of those so-called facts is an assumption, made due to lack of evidence. But the situation has changed now, following the cross-examination of the latest witness to take the stand. Don't be absurd. What is this nonsense? Yes, when you bring everything we've learnt so far together and consider it as a whole, it's clear. There's a question that we now need to reconsider, namely... We've all been led to believe that the strychnine poison afflicted Mr. Shamspear was in the tea brought to him by Mr. Natsume, but that's conjecture at best.
Objection!
The victim has testified that nothing else passed his lips that night. There's no other possibility. And since there was no trace of the tea left at the scene, it couldn't be tested for traces of the poison.
Objection!
As I said, the situation has changed, because in fact, Some of Mr. Natsume's tea was left at the scene, and a particular piece of evidence proves it.
Objection!
Oh, the tea. He made coins with the tea. That's why it was red. Ah, a ludicrous claim. Scotland Yard detectives investigated the scene exhaustively. What evidence are you suggesting they missed?
The defense has made a bold claim indeed. Very well, counsel. Present your proof. What evidence from the scene of the crime can tell us about the nature of the defendant's tea?
Let's say the puddle, right?
Take that!
What exactly is this piece of evidence supposed to reveal about Mr. Natsume's tea, counsel?
Well, I suspect it may, possibly. Alright, so not this. Alright, what if I present the soap? Ah! Do-do-do-do-do.
Take that!
Good gracious! The soap, again? The same bar the victim used to fashion his coins of ice?
Yes, that's right, my lord. It's just come back to me. Something about when we first found this bar of soap at the scene yesterday. It's more bars of soap! Soap? What are the bars of soap doing lined up on a ledge outside the window? I'm quite certain that when we originally stumbled upon the bars of soap, there was actually a frozen coin in each bar. So you discover the gas thief's coin factory. Fascinating. In a way, yes, but there's more. The coins we found in the soap at the time weren't normal ice.
There was something strange about them, you mean?
Exactly. Something very obviously strange. They were red. The ice was red. No, you mean... That's right. It's obvious to me now. And the fake coins in the soap were made from frozen tea. What? And I would remind the court of a statement made by Mr. Natsume earlier in this trial.
That evening, yes, I did take some freshly brewed tea with me when I visited Mr. Shakespeare's room as a gift. The public water pump outside always freezes at night, so I bought bottled water especially to make it. And this is the result. Never will I touch tea again. Never.
No.
Ah, yes, I believe there had been a snowfall that day. It was particularly cold. Sadly, on such occasions, the poorly constructed water mains in the East End are prone to freezing.
So on the night in question, Mr. Shakespeare, having no running water to use, was forced to use the tea brought by Mr. Natsume in order to make his fake coins.
My word.
There were 2 bars of soap on the window ledge when my judicial assistant and I investigated the scene. That's right, and we only borrowed one of them. Which means that even as we speak, some of the defendant's tea is still present at the scene of the crime, frozen solid in a bar of soap outside Mr. Shakespeare's window.
Extraordinary.
Earlier today, Inspector Gregson informed the court that even if 1 drop of the tea remained, Scotland Yard would be able to analyze it for poison. As such, we are now in a position to prove or disprove what has until now been mere conjecture, by finding out for sure whether or not Mr. Natsume's tea actually contains strychnine at all. Ah, you smug nipponese. My lord, we cannot do the defendant in the injustice of passing judgment now. The police should be dispatched to recover the remaining bar of soap from the scene at once, and the defense requests a thorough analysis of the frozen tea embedded in it to determine whether or not it contains any poison.
Bailiff, instruct the police to attend the scene at once.
Yes, my lord, understood.
It would seem we have no choice but to suspend these proceedings for the time being. I trust you have no objection, Lord Van Zeeks.
None, my lord.
Scotland Yard will recover the tea from the scene and carry out the requisite tests immediately. The trial will resume at the same hour tomorrow. Prosecution and defense may conduct further investigations as appropriate in the interim.
Yes, my lord. Well, we managed to scrape through there somehow.
Thank you, counsels. Court is adjourned until tomorrow.
Alrighty. To be continued. I'm assuming we might go to another investigation. I mean, we'll find out momentarily. Did say we are free to investigate as needed, so I feel like we will be putzing around a little bit. Save our progress, and we'll see what comes up next. Yeah, investigation part 3 is up next, so we're going to be poking around tomorrow. But alright, very, very interesting happenings here. Still feel like, you know, young Popeye here is a bit suspicious. He seems, you know, he really hates Mr. Shamspear, of course, who is a sham, makes sense. But also, I understand his hatred towards him, because obviously the stuff that Shamspear is not paying is getting taken out of his salary, which is, you know, not great. I don't know about in this period of time, but I know currently that's actually illegal in the United States. You know, if you get stiffed on a table, I know at a restaurant, you know, some places do take, you know, if someone dine and dashes, takes that out of the server's tips for the day. That is actually legal. Pro tip, if that's happened to you, contact a lawyer. That is actually illegal, but a lot of places still do it. So, I don't know about workers' rights and, you know, the turn of the 1900s, but I would definitely be very upset with Mr. Shamspear, because he said it's been going on for weeks and weeks. So, definitely Mr. Popeye here is hurting, so I wouldn't be too surprised if he came after Mr. Shamspear with a vengeance. How he did that, I really don't know. Really don't know how he got poisoned. Like I said, maybe they're in cahoots, maybe Van Zeeks was onto something, but then also, I have no idea. I don't know. I do think he's up to something, though. But with that does wrap up trial part 1 here. Definitely a lengthy trial, a little bit longer than I anticipated, but wasn't expecting to figure out how he was scamming the gas company. So that was pretty fun, actually. I really liked that. Really enjoyed it. And I was on the right track with the soap. I just had to re-investigate the soap. That's the thing with the investigating the evidence. I was like, oh, I already got all the info updated in the court record. I should be able to present as needed. And then it's like, well, did it too early. Had to investigate the soap once again. But that was really fun. So I had a lot of fun here in this episode. I hope you did as well. If you did enjoy it, don't forget to go ahead and hit that like button. Theories, comments, suggestions, anything for me, go ahead and leave that down below. And don't forget, later this afternoon, because even though I'm recording this on the 25th, this is the episode for the 26th. Later this afternoon, make sure to tune into the Titan Cards channel, link in the description, for Allie's very special announcements. You know, your hostess here, this disembodied voice. I have a special announcement over there on the Titan Cards channel pertaining to something big coming in September over there. So I'm very excited about that, and I hope you like it as well. As I mentioned in yesterday's episode, did spend quite a bit of time working on some voice work for something related to it. So I hope you guys enjoy it. A little teaser trailer of something to come. So I'm very excited for that. Actually do have to finish up the rest of that video sometime this afternoon. As well as certified football, elements football, and 3 cases of Chrome Galaxy Star Wars. And then, you know, listing, of course, sorting and listing 3 cases with a single. So I have a lot on my docket today. Did actually come in early. See, proof here, it's 11:38, so woke up. I got like a whole, I think like 3.5 hours of sleep. My eyes hurt. That's what I hate about being tired, is like my eyes are itchy. I've been having a lot of allergies, but I notice when I'm extra tired, my eyes, it's just, they hurt to be open. Sometimes it goes away, sometimes it doesn't. Hasn't completely gone away yet, so that's a little bit. It took some Sudafed, though. Allergies. Florida. It's not even allergy season. It's just 365 allergies here. 365 allergies and heat waves. So, that is the Florida life. But hey, that's it. But anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, like I said, make sure you smack that like button. Leave your comments down below. And if you're not yet part of the Allie's Treasure Trove family, love to have you join us. Make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Also, before I get on out of here, do have to give a big shout out to all of my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so much for your all's above and beyond support. I meant to say you all, and I said y'all, and I'm like, oh well, whatever. More Florida things. But thank you so much to you all for your above and beyond support. I absolutely, truly do appreciate it. 4 Ultimate Excavators, Jack Perez, Keith Muta, Mako, and Stephen Olivo. 3 Gemstone Miners, Andon, Mark Mardini, and Stephen Bly. And 1 Crystal Collector of John Michek. But thank you so much to all of my patrons once again. Like I said, really appreciate your guys' above and beyond support. Whether you're on a tier in which I say your name at the end of every video or not, I really, truly appreciate it. So thank you so much. You guys are going above and beyond. But that does it for me here today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll join me next time as we investigate some more mysterious happenings here on Allie's Treasure Trove. Take care. Hope to catch you in the next episode. Bye!